The locker room is back and better than ever, and coming up today we will preview the 2016 college football season. Plus we go one-on-one with Gary Danielson from CBS Sports and a whole lot more inside the locker room. Inside the locker room with Mickey Shadrick, Gerhard Mathangani, I'm Chase Robinson. We're back and ready for another college football season.
It's always exciting this time of year.
Yeah, you get high school going and you have to wait a couple of weeks for college and you have to wait a few more weeks for the NFL, but we're just about to get it all kicked off.
Well, let's start by talking some college football. Let's start with the reigning national champions, Alabama. Big game to start the season off this year once again.
They've become kings of this. The neutral site game to begin the year, and it really puts an emphasis in fall camp, really gets everybody excited for what's coming up for the regular season. But it's hard for me to get excited for this one because while on paper the brand looks awesome, Alabama versus Southern California, you can count the national championships with fingers and toes, but this game, it doesn't seem USC is quite there right now. It's a big game for Alabama because it puts them back in Jerry World. But as of right now, I know we'll give our predictions later, but as of right now, I just can't get as excited about this one as I am some of the other games here in this opening weekend.
Yeah, it's too bad that this isn't the USC of 5-10 years ago, but it's brilliant marketing by Alabama. I mean, you go get a USC name that, as Gerhard said, that brings all of that creed with along with the name, but not much opposition.
Right.
Like we saw in that video there, the quarterbacks in Alabama, that's a big thing. Once again, they don't have a starting quarterback. He is not named a starting quarterback yet. What are y'all seeing between Cooper Bateman, Jalen Hurt, and everybody going for that job?
Can I be honest? A carbon copy of every Alabama quarterback that's been there since Nick Saban's been there. They're really just traces of a model that Nick Saban wants. He says it all the time. He doesn't want a quarterback to lose the game for him. He doesn't necessarily need him to win, so they don't have to be this dynamic Jameis Winston kind of quarterback. Tim Tebow is another good example. Cam Newton is another good example. He doesn't run a quarterback-centric offense. So it's just who doesn't lose the games and then who can make those passes down the field. They have lots of great deep threats and then guys like O.J. Howard that can carve you up in the middle. But as of right now, they're really kind of figments of each other. And so it's really hard to thin slice Cooper Bateman to Blake Barnett. Just give me the guy who threw the less interceptions in the scrimmage. That's usually the guy that's got a leg up going forward.
Yeah, who would have thought that Alabama would still haven't named their quarterback and Auburn would have.
Right.
But I'm with Gerhard. I don't think there's too much reason for concern. We'll see when they take the field what Saban's got in mind at that spot.
Not to mention that Cooper Bateman last year played against Ole Miss. That was his first action basically all season long.
Right.
They found out he wasn't the guy. What happened in January? They won the national championship.
Well, here is Nick Saban. He spoke this week about the quarterback situation.
We want to play the guy that's the most ready to give us the best chance, but we also want to continue to develop guys that can compete at this position in the future, and that's kind of where it is right now.
The Auburn Tigers take on the Clemson Tigers Saturday night. What are y'all seeing in this matchup?
This one's huge for Auburn because I really think it can set the temperature of the season for them moving forward. They don't necessarily have to win. Once again, we'll get to the picks later. But they do have to have a decent showing, a good showing. And people will measure good in a variety of different ways. And I think Gus Malzahn has his measure of good as compared to everybody else. But this is a team with the Heisman Trophy favorite and the team that most people think will maybe, if not win the national championship, at least get back to the national championship game and play in Tampa. For Auburn, this is a real measuring stick of where you compare as of right now to the best of the best. And it'll be a mirror for Auburn, so to speak, playing that game at Jordan-Hare underneath the lights at home.
I think a good showing for Auburn is really important in this game. I think last year left a bad taste in a lot of fans' mouth, and a lot of people losing a little bit of faith maybe in Malzahn and his ability to run this program. Whether you think they have to win or not, I'm not sure they have to win. I do think they have to play very respectable in this game, and I do think they've got two big things on their side to help them do that, and a much, much improved defense, we think, and obviously a Saturday night home crowd advantage at Jordan-Hare. That's a pretty tough place for the opposition to play.
What's it going to take for Auburn to stop Deshaun Watson?
It's going to be a very, very, very considered, concerned, unified effort against Deshaun Watson. The more time he's on the field, the less of a chance Auburn has to win. They can get him off the field, off his spots, not comfortable, and that's going to be largely in part by that front four and by extension the front seven. If they can make him uncomfortable in the game for a longer stretch of the game, they give Sean White and the offense enough chances to put some points on the board. That'll be their only way of winning. Deshaun Watson stays on the field, this can get ugly.
It's going to be an interesting strategy to me, because how does Kevin Steele play this? You know, a lot of coaches like to play zone so that their DBs can see the quarterback and that they can run and chase him down. I'm not so sure that that is the way to go here, because I think if those receivers are open and he gets confident with his arm, Auburn also should have a pretty good chance to make him uncomfortable with their pass rush. They should be able to win a lot of one-on-one battles at the line of scrimmage so that they can fit the run solidly and not get hurt there. I kind of like the idea of those good corners they've got, locking down those receivers and taking a chance with their front seven being able to control Watson. So it'll be interesting. The strategy will be very interesting.
Well, here is Coach Gus Malzahn on Deshaun Watson.
He does a very good job within the system, but his strength probably is when things break down, and then when they choose to run him. He's an excellent runner. He's got a very good first step, similar to Nick Marshall as far as the first step with explosiveness. And then you got a guy that's experienced, and not just experienced, but experienced in big games.
The Jacksonville State Gamecocks made it to the national championship last season. They've added some more to their roster. What are y'all seeing from JSU this season?
A very, very exciting season. And really, there's a lot more of community excitement going into this year as opposed to maybe going into last year where they lost the second round of the playoffs. They fueled that loss 2 years ago into what they did last year. If they could do the same this year with a lot of the pieces still in place, and like you said, some new guys coming in from those top ranks, including a guy that we know really well in Rock Thomas, who played at Oxford High School and also played at Auburn, I think that JSU, the sky is the limit. And really, they now know what it takes to get there. And these things are overused terms in football, but I really think it works in their case.
Right.
Yeah, I think that the best thing that JSU's got going for them, they got a lot going for them, they really do. But I think the experience in the national championship game and that was the last taste in their mouth that's been with them this entire offseason, that has a way of making a team hungry, has a way of making a team want it more than everybody else. I think that's the biggest intangible that may carry them this season.
And brilliant scheduling, by the way. Thursday night, before all those big-time college football games, before Alabama and Auburn get on the field, and to put your product on Thursday night beforehand, that's incredible for them.
Well, we're excited to see the JSU Gamecocks. We're going to talk more college football throughout the show. Coming up next, I go one-on-one with Gary Danielson from CBS Sports, so stay with us in the locker room. Back here in the locker room, and we're going to take you back to July now at SEC Media Days when I had the opportunity to go one-on-one with Gary Danielson, analyst for CBS Sports. So here we go with our one-on-one this week. Back here at SEC Media Days, got Gary Danielson from CBS Sports. You get to call football here in the SEC every Saturday. What's that like getting to call football for this conference?
Well, sometimes you say after you say something out of your mouth, you know you're going to hear about it for a couple weeks. I don't know. It's hard to put in words. You look for a job that can get you going. You know, I mean, a lot of people go to work every day. They check in at 9 o'clock, they leave at 6 o'clock, and nobody notices. I never wanted a job like that. I wanted to go where the accountability was the highest. And believe me, when you're working these games, the big game on CBS every Saturday, everybody is watching and listening, and you can't match that intensity in the broadcast or on the field.
You know, you're close to this conference. What is this week? What does Media Days mean to the SEC?
I don't know. I really don't. I mean, I think it's important for you guys, you know, the league makes their players and coaches available to, you know, to allow the media that follows and is so important, the football in the fall in the South. So it's good for the league to allow all of the media an opportunity to talk to the players, because during the season it gets pretty intense. I think for the coaches and the players, it's kind of a grind, you know, but there's no doubt it signifies it's right around the corner. It just does seem like they're moving it up every year. It gets earlier and earlier. I thought it was a little bit more fun when it was towards the end of July and you really did know that football was going to start, on the foot and in the air in a couple days.
Your longtime partner, Vern Lundquist, this is his final season. Talk about what he's meant, to work with and some memories you've had with him.
Well, he is a joy. He has, that factor that a lot of us would pay to have. He's just likable, and he's trustworthy, and the fan knows that when Vern's on, they know that, hey, that guy, what he says and what he is exactly on camera as he is off camera. He's just a delight to be around. But, I don't want to take his likability and his jolly Uncle Vern persona. The fans of this conference should never underestimate the importance that what he's brought to the importance of this conference. The footprint of the SEC was, very regional for years and years and years. It was a great conference. But Vern helped take this conference and move it to the rest of the United States. And his voice, his credibility, his fact that he wasn't exactly right from, Birmingham or Atlanta, he was more of an outsider, I think allowed the SEC to go from a regional to a national conference, and they haven't been able to slow down yet.
Let's talk football for a second. Alabama won a national championship last year. What's it going to take for them to get back there?
Probably more of the same. It's not going to be because of a lack of talent. It's not going to be because of a lack of intensity. They'll all be ready to play. Everybody they play, they know will be ready for it. It'll look exactly the way it does in the past years. But there's always those 2 or 3 games where some key clutch plays have to be made. Last year, Tennessee game, 2 fade passes. They hit, young players make catches. Year before that, Blake Sims scrambles on 3rd and 4th down to win games. Jake Coker making some big plays. You've seen it all through this run that sooner or later, the talent in these games, they win their 9 games easy. But it's those 2 or 3 games that someone needs to make a play, and we'll see who this year will have to make those plays.
For the Auburn Tigers, a lot of disappointment from last season. What's it going to take for them to get back, to a few years ago?
Yeah, this offense is built around a quarterback. It may be one of the parts that makes them a little, dependent on maybe the ups and downs year to year. If they don't get great quarterback play, they really struggle. There's probably the most important incoming player in the league might be John Franklin, because if he can be what Gus Malzahn wants in a quarterback, everybody on that field will be better for Auburn, and they could become a part of the talk. I would be a little bit surprised if they make a run at the championship, but I'd be shocked if they have another year like they had in 2015.
The big talk here, especially this week, the Tennessee Vols. What's it going to take for them to win the SEC East?
Well, they got to start making plays in the clutch, just like we talked about with Alabama. They're good enough. Last year they had 3 games where not just the players, but the coaching staff also kind of started looking at the game clock, basically choked a little bit as the game wore down at the end. They need to get comfortable winning. It's not going to be just one tight game. I think they need to win a couple tight games where then they get down to that 4-minute clock in the 4th quarter and they go, we got them right where they want them. Alabama always believes with 4 minutes to go they can pull it out. Tennessee does not, and when they get that final step, they'll be back.
And finally, Kirby Smart, the big coach this week, the new coach. What's your thoughts on him and what he's going to do at Georgia?
Well, the standards are high. Like I told Kirby, all McElwain did was take a team to the SEC championship. So it'll be tough. I don't think this is I think Georgia's talent maybe has been a little bit better the previous 3 years than what they have this year. I'm a little concerned at running back. I don't think we'll see the real Nick Chubb this year. I think they'll bring him along slowly. Sonny Michel is not an every down back. They need a little bit more physicalness there. Maybe Holyfield can bring that for them. But I don't know if they're strong enough at wide receiver. I think it's going to be a bit of a challenge, but who knows? Florida won 2 tight games at the beginning of 2015, and all of a sudden they started believing, and Kirby will know how to bring them along.
Great insight there from Gary Danielson, analyst. You'll see him every Saturday on the SEC games on CBS Sports. We're going to grab a timeout. When we come back, it's the Locker Room Roundtable. Great topics to discuss, as well as our Pick 6. So stay with us inside the Locker Room. Back here in the locker room, we've been talking college football. Now let's shift gears a little bit to high school. Pigskin Roundup again coming up this Friday night. Our game of the week, Jacksonville at Saxon. Always a big rivalry game.
Yeah, and you have the really interlacing story with Clint Smith, who used to coach at Saxon, and Jonathan Miller, who's one of the most successful, if not the most successful coach in his first 4 years with that Wildcat program. Sax with a tough loss to Welborn last week. They'll be motivated going into this one. Jacksonville with a huge win last week over number 3 Alexandria. You have to worry about the hangover effect a little bit there. So there's different dynamics going into this one. I expect to see another phenomenal game as both teams played in their first week of the season last week. I really like Jacksonville the way they're playing right now. I would not be a bit surprised, though, to see Sax rally the troops.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me is you kind of have to take this thing week by week and see what everyone has. It's hard to know after just 1 week of real games or some jamboree games that first week. But I'm wondering if Sax is as good as they've been the last few years. I don't know yet. They may be. And it's hard to know, is Jacksonville really that good?
Right.
You know, so
Right.
This will be a game where two teams that'll really test each other, and we'll find out who comes out on top in this one.
And you can find that out coming up on the Pigskin Roundup, of course, 10:30 on Friday night. We'll have all the scores and highlights. We'll be all over the place covering those games. And there you see we'll be out at Pleasant Valley, Southside, Coosa Christian, Talladega, Alexandria, Glencoe, and more. Eddie Bullock from Anniston will be in studios, as well as Orlando Waters, who played on that '89 state championship team at Anniston, will be in. So catch us at 10:30 on Friday night. It's time for the locker room roundtable now, and this is a topic that's been really hot this week, and that's Colin Kaepernick, 49ers quarterback, did not stand for the national anthem at their preseason game. First of all, y'all's thoughts on that, and then is this a cause for him losing his job?
Well, these things it's two different questions, and they're two really important questions, I think, important right now. And I don't think maybe in even 3 or 4 weeks it will be as important. The thing about the Kaepernick stance as it stands right now is what's the motivation, what's the reason, what's the emphasis behind it? What does he want to get started behind it? And he wants to get a talk, a conversation, something started behind the entire protest. Is it the way I would have done it? Maybe some other people would have done it. Probably not. But I don't see this crazy need to vilify person for what he thinks. He just might be, in my situation, in my personal opinion, the motives and the way he's going about it, it's a little bit off in the sense of, does it get you your win?
Right.
If the win is to have people empowered, I don't think that standing up against something is the necessary avenue to go about it. Now, I respect his right to do it, and that's part of what makes the country great. But at the end of the day, we'll find out in weeks and months and years to come if he's standing on the right side of history.
Yeah, I have no problem with anyone's right to protest, speak their mind. That's part of what makes our country so great. I don't agree with his method at all. I think there's other ways to do it, but I definitely support his right to do whatever he wants to do.
Are we going to see more players trying to do these things just because, if he's doing it and getting away with it? Are we going to see more stuff like this?
It depends on how it hits other people, because even Colin Kaepernick has mentioned the fact that he has friends and family that are in the military, and there's so many people who, guys like Drew Brees and guys like his ex-teammates, who have been saying, hey, look, this is not the way that I would do it because I respect the military. And then Colin Kaepernick is trying to say that he's not disrespecting the military. So there's so many things that just get lost in translation about what he's actually doing. I think that players will be calculated in the way that they do it, because of course you have to look out for yourself. I mean, you look at LeBron James and all those guys at the ESPYs, what they've done. Michael Jordan, what he's done. Very careful to make sure that they include everybody. That this is not a us against them, because that gets you nowhere. But Colin Kaepernick is wanting to shed light on something else. So it really depends on how it hits the players. Now, if it hits the players the same way it hits Colin Kaepernick, I expect to see a few, but I don't expect to see some huge wave moving forward with this thing.
I think we'll see more of it. I think it's the world we live in. I don't think there's anything sacred anymore, anything out of bounds. So yeah, I think we'll see more and more of this type stuff.
Well, staying in the NFL, Tony Romo has gone down with a back injury, out for the season. Have we seen the end of Tony Romo in the NFL?
And it's rough. I think when he's healthy, he is a lot better than people give him credit for. But the thing is that he's now in his late 30s, and this is not the first time he's hurt his back, and that did not look like something that will break a bone in his back, and it did. You just have to worry about his body as it stands right now and him moving forward. I don't think that we've seen the end of Tony Romo because I think his pain tolerance is through the roof. But I think the Cowboys have to be cautious about the way they handle it. But thankfully, Dak Prescott's looked pretty good so far in the preseason.
I would get Dak going. I have seen enough to know that some guys, there's nothing wrong with being this way. Some guys are just injury prone. It's just the way they're made. Romo's injury prone. I've seen enough to know he can't get through a season anymore.
Right.
I would get Dak Prescott ready, prepared to be the quarterback. And if Romo comes back and is healthy and Prescott's doing good, Romo's my backup. If Prescott is struggling, put Romo back in there as long as he'll last.
Exactly. And I know this wasn't a question that you had, but how impressed have you been with Dak Prescott in the NFL? I mean, Alabama and Auburn, we've seen him for the last 4 years in all these matchups, and I did not see this at all.
Oh, yeah. Staying somewhat with the NFL, former NFL quarterback Tim Tebow is trying out baseball. Will we be seeing him on the diamond anytime soon?
I don't think, I do think so, but it won't be because he's a pro player. It will mainly be because teams want, I guess, the gimmicky stuff. And that's kind of a cynical way of looking about it. But I'll tell you what, say what you want to, but Tim Tebow did look the part. At the plate, he looked the part, and scouts with a lot more knowledge than I have will be able to tell you what his power is actually like, what his speed is actually like, what his arm's like in the outfield. But, I mean, he cranked a few home runs. He does look the part. Baseball is notorious for getting these gimmicky kind of stories, especially on the minor league level. So I will not be a bit surprised if he does get on a team. If he is a pro-ready prospect, then I don't know. We'll find out his batting average and all those all the statistics that we look up afterwards when he does get on a baseball team. But I will always give a guy so much credit for chasing after his goals, chasing after his passion. He did it in the NFL. He didn't have the arm. He's doing it now in baseball. He doesn't need the money. He's a talented guy. Go after your dream. And I like personally, I like the fact that he's doing it. We'll see how far it takes him.
All I got to say is you brought up two things that prove it's great to live in a free country, Colin Kaepernick and Tim Tebow.
Exactly.
More power to both of them.
Right.
Well, now it's time to shift back to college football with our Pick Six as one of my favorite parts of the show here. And first game up is Alabama at USC. We'll start with you, Mickey.
Alabama.
Yeah, like I said at the top of the show, I'm not very, very impressed so far with the matchup. USC's not there yet. Very talented, but I like the Crimson Tide.
I'm going with Alabama as well in this one. Next up, the Auburn-Clemson game. Mickey?
I know Clemson's the safe pick here, the logical pick. However,
going out on a limb.
However, I'm going to go with Auburn and say that defensive front is going to be able to handle Clemson's offensive line, and that home crowd, both of those two things together, is going to get Auburn past their quarterback woes, and they're going to come out of there with a win.
If it was a neutral site game, I like Clemson by 2 touchdowns. At Jordan-Hare, it's a little bit more heavier on Auburn, but the pick for me is Clemson, and I think they win it in a much, much closer game than most people expect.
I'm with you, too. It's going to be a close game. Clemson's going to win. But with Auburn, you never know. They're not ranked.
Right.
So that's the time when they just, go crazy and win these big games. Next up is Georgia and North Carolina, Mickey.
Well, the smart pick is Georgia. That's who I'm going with.
Kirby, I think he's got a renewed sense of interest. He knows how to prepare for these big games because he's been doing it at Alabama. And this game is neutral site game, so to speak. It's at the Georgia Dome. And so I like the Bulldogs in this game.
I'm with Georgia in that one as well. Next up is a big one, Ole Miss and Florida State.
I would normally might go Ole Miss. I like their quarterback situation, but I need to see some proof that Ole Miss, that the karma's kind of still there after what's been going on with them off the field. So for this game, I'm going with Florida State.
Yeah, I will with Florida State as well, and I think that Florida State's got a lot more to prove because they're now seeing Clemson where they were a couple of years ago. I think Jimbo Fisher's going to use this game to really rally his troops to get ready to start playing in that ACC schedule, and I like the Noles.
I went back and forth on this one. I couldn't decide, but I'm going with the Ole Miss Rebels. Next up is Houston and Oklahoma.
I'm going to pick the Sooners here, going Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think Houston is a little overrated. I like their coach, I like their offense, but I think the Sooners win this one going away.
I'm going Oklahoma as well. And our final one, Notre Dame and Texas.
Well, since I'm kind of in upset mode this week, I am going to go with the Texas Longhorns. They have to win one of these games sooner or later, so I'm going to say it's this weekend.
They do have to win one of these games sooner or later. The guy that makes all these graphics, Jason Sparks, is a huge Texas fan. And in fact, when I was sending him my picks, I had to tell him sorry because I'm going with the Irish.
I'm going with Notre Dame in this one as well, and we'll keep up with this, and we'll have our pick six every week here on The Locker Room. That'll do it for this edition of The Locker Room. Have a great college football weekend, and we'll see you back here next week.